Have you ever wondered how to make hard Latin guitar trap beats like this? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to get that sound using a real guitar. It doesn't matter if you're a virtuoso at playing or you just bought your first guitar and you don't even know the names of the open strings. By the end of this video, you'll understand the theory needed to play these progressions on the guitar, as well as some techniques to get that bounce and fullness inside your DAW. Let's jump right in. But before we do that, 94% of my viewers are not subscribed. It would really mean a lot if you could go down, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and stay up to date on future uploads. Let's get back to the video. First, we want to start with guitar. There's a ton of Latin chord progressions that you could use. If you just go on Google and search Latin chord progressions, you'll get a bunch of results. Today, I'm going to use the one that I know everybody's familiar with, which is 1-6-5. We're going to start in the D minor scale. So 1-6-5 would sound like this. You can already hear the Latin influence that that progression has. I already have this progression recorded, but I'm still going to take you through exactly how I did it. Let's listen to this progression first though. That had both chords and top line on it. We're just focused on the chords right now. What you're gonna wanna do is first pick your scale, and then I just came up with a strumming pattern. So for this one, I went with something that had a lot of groove. And then for the second half, I took away the finger picking and I just went. That's that classic Latin bounce that you hear in so many tracks. In order to record these, I just went one chord at a time. So first I did D minor and I recorded this for 8 bars. I just did that over and over and over again until I recorded one that I actually thought was good. Then I moved to B flat major and I played that chord over and over again for 8 bars until I got one that I really liked. Once I had all the parts in FL Studio, I just cut them and arranged them exactly how I wanted. But all together, they sound like one progression. Once you have the chords laid down, then it's time for a top line. The trick is to keep this simple. We're not trying to show off our guitar talents here. We're trying to make a beat for an artist. Sometimes the simplest melodies and patterns sound the best simply because they work. Keep that in mind when you're writing these kinds of melodies. It's really easy to go overboard. So once you have your top line and your chord progression recorded, what you can do is head over to the mixer and actually start to mix it and kind of get that vibe going. I'm gonna solo it here on the mixer and you can hear what it sounds like before and after. We'll start with before. It sounds a lot better. We'll go one by one now. So I have an EQ, which just boosts a little bit of the mids, gets rid of that low end. I just really toned down that boominess. Then I did a compressor, fast attack, medium release, and a lot of compression. I really wanted to tame the dynamics of this performance because there's so many clicks and pops with me hitting the guitar and plucking the strings. So I just wanted it all to be one solid, glued together piece. After that, I just added another EQ. I actually boosted a little bit more of the bass and took some of the highs out. I felt like it needed it at this point. And then I just put on some wider. This is a free plugin, great plugin. Just put this on just to give it some stereo image. So that sounded really good. And then I just added a little bit of reverb here, just a small reverb, just to give it some atmosphere. The processing for the top line is pretty similar. I cut the lows, boosted the high mids because that's where the top line sits. Then I grabbed a compressor. Same thing, decent bit of compression. And then finally, I added another EQ, gives it a little bit of warmth. And I threw that through the same small reverb that the rhythm guitar is in. Also, when you're processing guitars, what you want to try and do is pitch it up or down. What I found is that guitars sound really, really, really good when you pitch them down, but you play them higher up on the neck. For example, I can play a D minor here. Now, if I pitch that D minor down 4 semitones, we get B flat minor. This chord sounds a lot different than the chord here. This just sounds a little bit more open. When you pitch guitars down, there's some digital artifacting that happens that just gives it this texture that I really, really like. So when you're mixing these guitars, try pitching it down first and see what it sounds like. So now that we have the guitar processed, recorded, and ready to go, we can start adding other instruments. Now, for beats like this, you're usually gonna wanna stick to a few instruments. The instruments that I would consider adding would be trumpets, horns, and violins. Pianos can work really well too, and then also you can throw in some textures just to add ambience. You wanna keep in mind that call and response works really, really well in these scenarios. Call and response is the idea that one instrument plays something, calls out, and the other instrument responds. Now, I already had these written. I had already made this loop for Instagram. If you don't follow me, you should follow me over there. I drop daily tips and a bunch of free stuff every single day. But this loop, I have just a few instruments. So first is the piano. Basically follows the exact same rhythm that my guitar is doing. After that, I added some trumpets. Now these trumpets are really cool because I played with the velocity here. You'll notice these two kind of raise up in volume, these two chords here. Just adds a little bit of bounce. So when you're adding these trumpets and these horns, try and play with the velocity to make it sound a little bit more real and a little bit more human. And then finally, I added a sub bass, and this is just following the root notes of the chords. Altogether, the guitars, the piano, the trumpets, and the sub bass sound like this. Next up is the drums. First thing you're gonna wanna do, if you are making a Latin guitar trap beat, you're gonna wanna put some claps in your drums. I have this loop from a Cashmere kit that sounds really good. I'll play it in context. Another element that I really like to add is shakers. For this loop, what I did was I put the shakers on the back half of the loop because that's when the guitar simplifies. And so it sounds like this. You just wanna, you know what I mean? Do a little bachata. I'm gonna go back to the main part of the loop that I'm gonna use. I'm gonna add a new pattern, and this is gonna be my drums here. We can just duplicate it over. First things first, I'm adding hi-hats. What you wanna do for the hi-hats, depending on your tempo, the divisions might have to change. Right click on your hi-hat and hit fill each 4 steps. Then copy it, and with that copy still selected, scroll down to reduce the velocity. Grab everything again, copy it again to go in between those notes. Scroll all the way down so they're all 0 velocity, and then scroll up just a little bit while holding Alt, and you get a bounce that sounds like this, which sounds a hell of a lot better than just doing a straight through hi-hat that sounds like this. That sounds like to me. Fill each 4 step, Control A, Shift D, Shift click, Alt, scroll down, Control A, Shift click drag, Alt, scroll down, scroll up. And then just Control B that all the way through your pattern. For the snare, I'm actually gonna layer a snare and a clap. Let's see. I'm gonna use this clap because it sounds pretty real. Now, I'm at 95 BPM right now, which means I'm gonna double time it. I'm gonna put the snare on the 2 and the 4 instead of the 3. Now with that snare, since it's layered with the clap, we can add those accent snares and it sounds different enough from the main snare and gives a lot of bounce. We're just gonna wanna turn it down first. So here we go. Maybe pitch it up too. That's sounding really good now. I'm gonna grab an open hat. gonna take another hat and I'm going to reverse it. It sounds like that. And I'm gonna put that where the fourth one would have gone. Again, that just adds a little bit of bounce. I really like the way that sounds. Next up is the 808. I usually like to pick short, punchy 808s, like the Zay 808. I usually actually exclusively use that specific 808 in almost every single one of these types of beats. I'm gonna make sure it cuts itself. One thing I like to do when I'm programming my 808s is pitch them up by a couple of octaves, just so I can hear the note better. I find it pretty difficult to hear the note when it's in low end. I raise the note up, I can actually start to hear it. Cool. Next up, I'm gonna pick a kick, and maybe there'll be some differences between the kick and the 808, maybe not. We'll just have to see. Next up is the arrangement. Now, if you've been adding all the proper elements to this beat, this part is actually really easy. So first, I'm just gonna go and split by channel here and get these drums out. And I'm just gonna duplicate this loop a bunch of times. First up, we have the intro. What I'm gonna do is cut this first half of the loop because the guitar is a little bit more active, and I'm gonna just use this second half. One thing I really like to do on my intros for these kinds of beats is actually record a 4-bar intro before the actual intro. So for example, down here, I have this recorded. I have the clap underneath, and then I recorded this note here. And then I put a little effects transition here, which sounds like this. Altogether, the intro sounds like this. You can also hear I have another swoop effect there. You want to add a lot of these transitions into this style of beat because it really adds fullness and gives the artist a direction of what the hook could be, what the verse could be, so on and so on. And then we'll go into the first part of the hook. I'm gonna take the kick out, and I'm also gonna take the sub bass out. And I'm gonna change this first pattern too of the snare, and I'm gonna take out these accent snares and also the open hat. The next up is the verse. So I think I wanna have the percussion in the verse, and I'm gonna take the top line out. I'm gonna take the trumpets out too. I'm gonna actually keep that sub bass in there. And while I'm at it, I'm just gonna grab my drums, route them to a mixer slot. And like I do in almost all of my beats, I'm gonna put a soft clipper on all of my buses. All right, so that's the verse. We're gonna need a transition out of the verse into like a breakdown-y type section. I like this one. I think we'll just copy the guitar over. And the sub bass as well. Get another riser too, and then we'll bring back the hook. So then we put the hook back in, and for the outro, I'm thinking just everything all together and just automate the master volume. Let's give this a full listen and see what we came up with. you enjoyed the video or you learned something, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next week.